Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. We scream about the Rangers so that you don't have to. This is episode number 44, live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Today's show is about the last two games. We have season awards to hand out and a lot more. Nick, we're almost there.
This is what it's about, man. The way you think about the regular season when your expectations are a deep playoff run or like prerequisites in college where you have to take those to get to the important classes in your major. When you're a team that has legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations, this is just the weeding out process. You got to get here. This is part of that journey. Now, it feels the NHL season is too long. It's something I've been an advocate for a long time. It's the same problem the NBA has. The season needs to be shorter. The season is way too long. You're never going to get owners to agree to take games away. But the season is too long, and it turns the high variance nature of the hockey playoffs to the point where as long as you get in, the regular season kind of loses some of its weight because the season's so long. Like, think about what's going to happen. Everybody is making the recurring joke. I've seen it at least 7-8 times. Yeah, the Bruins just had the best regular season of all time. They're going to lose to the Islanders and Ilya Sorokin in 5 games because he's going to have a 970 save percentage across 5 games. And everything the Bruins just did is kind of for naught. That's the thing about the NHL season being so long. It's a cruel mistress. But as far as the Rangers are concerned, we're here. First part of the job's done. Now comes the hard part. The regular season is the weeding out process. You got the kids who are going to switch majors to go to other places. Now it's time to see if the vision that the front office, the coach have aligned on here can manifest itself into a championship.
Yeah, we're to follow along with your idea. Like, this is finals week, essentially. We are nearing finals week, and we'll see who passes and who has studied for the exams and who fails and flunks out and isn't seen again until the next time they try. So for right now, these last two games, like tonight's game against Buffalo, it matters to Buffalo. Listen, for the Rangers obviously still want to play well, like we said last week, right? The Rangers still want to play well and they want to build off their good habits, etc. But deep inside, do they care? The answer is no. Like these next two games here, Buffalo and Toronto. Toronto doesn't care either. They're locked in. They're going to play Tampa Bay. We've known this since like day one, essentially, that these two teams are going to play each other. And for Buffalo is hanging on by a thread to their playoff hopes, and they need to win this game. So Buffalo is going to come out and swing, and they will do everything they can to get 2 points out of the Rangers tonight. Will the Rangers swing back? I don't know. And as much as they probably they will to a certain extent, they're not just going to lay down and let the Sabres run all over them for sure. But at the same time, the Sabres are playing for a lot more than the Rangers are. That's just that's the facts, and the players aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. Like they understand the situation. They know what's going on. They know the Sabres are going to come out and essentially just try to score 8, 9, 10 goals just so they can get a chance to not get eliminated in these playoffs. While the Rangers, they're in. Are they good? Like, I guess they have a theoretical chance of moving up into second place, maybe getting home ice advantage, but that requires the Devils to lose both games because they have the tiebreaker. To my understanding, the Devils have the tiebreaker over the Rangers.
More regulation wins.
So the Rangers, like, I guess if they win both and the Devils lose both, then the Rangers will have home ice advantage. But the chances of that happening probably aren't very high. So for the Rangers, it's, again, we talked about this last week. Just stay healthy. Just be careful. Just stay healthy. Nobody go down, and we'll be good.
So I'm going to borrow a Bill Simmons expression, and it's funny because I haven't listened to any of Bill Simmons' podcasts in like 5 or 6 years, but this one has always stuck with me. There was a talk show host back in the 50s. His name was Milton Berle, and he did not put in a lot of effort at work at any point. And the recurring joke Bill Simmons would always make going into a football week where it looked like the board was way too easy and it was going to be very easy to win money gambling that week on football was the let's just be careful out there week. That's what this is. Let's just be careful out there. Nothing crazy. These two games, materially inconsequential. You're going to get both your goalies in. I would imagine you're going to get Shesterkin in tonight, which is the understanding from what I saw. You might get Halak on Thursday. You might get Shesterkin. You could get a college goalie, which is what the Leafs are doing tonight.
Toronto might play their ATO backup. Like
Yeah.
that's how little they care about these last couple of games. Like they might sign you. Like they might sign me. They might sign one of us to just be like, yo, we got to get somebody in there, and we kind of don't want to play either of our goalies. Can you just play for a game? Like
Yeah.
I know if you give up 5 goals, 7 goals, it's all
You
good.
got the best story of all time.
You get the
Anytime you're at a
jersey.
bar.
That's right. You get the jersey. You get the team, rallying behind you. You have the story forever, and people will throw memes at you. So it's great. That's like Toronto just blatantly doesn't care, and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
they're solidified in their playoff spot. They're not moving, not going anywhere. Sign us. We'll play. Who cares?
Yeah, sure. Hey, man, there are a lot of people. You saw you see what the playoff ticket prices are like.
Oh
Imagine
yeah,
what people would pay to play on the Rangers. You get
yeah,
a lot of Long Island Italians out there ready to go.
yeah.
You'd have a lot of Tony
Where's Anthony
D'Angelos.
Botello when you need him? Where is he?
Yeah, he's a Staten Island Italian. That's different.
Well.
Yeah.
You're
You're in
I'd say
Staten
close
Island.
enough, but I feel like Long Island and Staten Island would both be attacking me as I speak. So I'm just
Yes,
gonna leave that
correct.
be.
Correct. You would be. So one of the interesting points when you talk about this season, and I've made this point, I think every single week since January. At no point have the Rangers ever really gotten everything lined up where it's all working at the same time. You've seen glimpses of a good team. You saw the power play get really hot for a few weeks. You saw the team defense get really strong for a few weeks. The goaltending, especially, has been really strong these last couple of weeks. But you never got it all lined up at the same time where you kind of felt like, okay, you got everything lined up. It feels like the team is playing consistently. It feels like there's a good grasp of what everybody's job and responsibilities are, and it's going to match the process, and the process is going to be good, so that's going to lead to good results. The Rangers haven't really ever gotten that at any point this season. But what's interesting about that, and why I think this is worth talking about, is the Rangers are going to end up 5th or 6th, maybe 7th if they lose both of these games in the entire NHL. They're already over 100 standings points, which, as far as regular seasons are concerned, that's a successful regular season. Anytime you can clear 100 standings points, that's a really good regular season. Yes, they're playing in a brutal division where two of the 4 teams ahead of them right now are in their same division, but you had a really successful regular season playing Ben Harper for significant stretches, playing Ryan Reeves through early December, like legitimately significant
Jake
roster.
Bunchletters as well got some games in.
We have the entire summer to lament the fact that Jake Leschyshyn is going to be the 4th line center next year to save money, but we'll worry about that this summer when we get there.
No.
But yeah, that's a great, Jake Leschyshyn, Lieber Hayek, Ben Harper, all these guys getting significant ice time, talking about a power play that was in the 20s until February, talking about a penalty kill that's been pretty mediocre all season, goaltending, which was pretty mid, to be frank, until about late February, early March, and they are still this far along, which is always one of the things you got to account for when you're talking about the underlying statistics and shot checking metrics. As the Rangers have the high end talent where they don't need to have the advantage in the underlying statistics. They just need to be close to 50-50. Like if they're 45-55, you're not okay with that, but you feel okay about it because the Rangers have enough high-end talent that they're going to be able to play their way out of that deficit. That's the way you got to think about that when you see things like the shot meter, you see things like the scoring chance flow charts. That's not saying, oh, this is what's going to happen. Think of it like probability. Like if you were going to flip a coin, but it had 3 sides on it as opposed to 2, would you flip a coin that, you didn't have great odds on? Probably, but it would help if, you were at 50-50. If you were going to flip a coin and you only won 45% of the time, you have less of a chance of winning. That's how you should be thinking about these metrics. It's not saying that because this is what happened before, it's what's going to happen going forward. It's saying that based on how things have gone, you would probably win about this amount of times. And think about it like that. That's the easiest way I can think to describe it is if you were to flip a coin and the odds of winning were 55-45, you still have a chance of winning. It's just more difficult to win now. And that's really the point you got to make when it comes to that, because you get a lot of people who just shut it down immediately. Yeah, the Rangers have a lot of high end talent. That helps a lot. That is the deciding factor a lot, especially as we look forward towards the playoffs. But based on how the regular season has gone, you would think that there is another level for the Rangers to get to here, and that's the elevator pitch for the Rangers. Nothing is really lined up for them in the regular season all at once. They're still going to finish as one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the regular season, and it feels like they have another level to get to. If they are this high up in the standings already, and you feel like they still have another level to get to, now that's enticing when you're talking about the elevator pitch.
The one team that kind of I can draw a parallel to. Now, I understand this is not the same situation, especially in the point standing, et cetera. They kind of remind me of the 2012 LA Kings in that
Yeah,
they, I know, like I said, the LA Kings were in eighth at the time, were in eighth place. They were the last team to get in, et cetera, et cetera. 3-1, they were down against the Kings and then against the Sharks, and all of a sudden they just stormed back and win the Stanley Cup. Like, that team throughout the entire season, it felt like they had more to give. It looked like they were losing it, but they were supposed to win, and they gave up points, and they weren't playing to their potential all year. And then when they got to the playoffs and they were down 3, I think it was 3-1 or 3-0 or whatever or what have you, the LA Kings figured it out. And then they stormed all the way back, and then they won, and then they won. Like, they won Stanley Cup, and it was they that run was spectacular by them, and they beat the Devils in the finals, and they won in 6, and then that was that. I'm not saying this is the same exact situation. That's
there's parallels.
hear me out. There are parallels to these two teams in that while the Rangers did finish with more points in both situations, it felt like not everything was clicking at the same time. The LA Kings didn't have that in 2012, and then come playoff time, they figured it out, and they got it. They got everything working at the same time in unison, and they won the Stanley Cup. Can the Rangers repeat that? Remains to be seen. But as we've talked about, they haven't had that moment yet, and maybe this is it. Maybe come playoff time, everything will click for them, and they win the and all, and the parade, and all, like, oh well, they won the Stanley Cup, and we can celebrate it. We'll never have another angry episode on the show ever again. But there are parallels to this, but it just remains to be seen whether the Rangers can figure it out like the LA Kings did.
I think it'd be very funny if the Rangers won the Stanley Cup and Ben Harper gets his name on the Stanley Cup because he met the games
Jake
played threshold.
Buncheletters as well will get his name on the cup.
I don't
So there
think
you
he
go.
played enough games. I think he only played 15. I forget the exact.
If he skates during the final, he gets his name on the cup.
Yeah, no, because I remember there was the year the Blues won the Cup. Delzato played like 5 regular season games for them, and he didn't get his name on the Cup. But that was what I was going for here. It's just I think it'd be very funny if Ben Harper, who his contribution was just being on the team, got his name on the Stanley Cup. It's got to be nice. It's got to be nice to be told.
Sure.
So, speaking of parallels and trying to find threads, that's the reason you study history. It's the reason why certain states are trying to not let people learn history right now, is once you have a better understanding of things have gone in the past, you can kind of use that to interpret what's going on around you in the present. One of the things I have in the visuals tab here, this is very convoluted. Hang on. Wait, no, not that one, not that one, this one. So this is the Rangers compared to the last 6 Stanley Cup champions. The one team that has a similar analytic and statistical profile to the Rangers, 17-18 Washington Capitals. A lot of high-end talent, superb goaltending, really good shooting percentage, but everything else kind of mediocre. You look at it, scoring chances for and against in the 20s, goals for 7th, goals against 13th, expected goals 20th, expected goals against 29th, 21st in high danger for, 29th in high danger against. Shooting, save percentage, veteran team, lots of playoff experience, coach who's had a couple of chances in the Stanley Cup Finals and lost. That's the only one out of all of these teams that's even remotely comparable to what the Rangers are at the present. You think about what Pittsburgh is. Pittsburgh, the years they won the Stanley Cups back to back, elite play driving, first and third in expected goals in the regular season. Colorado, pretty good across the board and everything. Nothing particularly elite, but pretty good across the board. And then Tampa, elite defense. Yeah, fourth in expected goals against, fourth in high danger chances against. Generally elite, genuinely elite defensive statistics in the regular season on the way to the playoffs. So that's one of the reasons you look at history like that, is to try and see, well, what's the Rangers formula? You think about that Capitals team that won the Stanley Cup. Braden Holtby went nuclear hot there for 2 months.
Yep.
Legitimately was the best goalie in those entire playoffs. They had the power play humming. I want to say they were 23% in the playoffs when I looked it up. The Rangers are capable of having their goalie have a .935 save percentage and the power play clicking at about 1 out of every 4 tries. That's a legitimate path for the Rangers formula to go far in the playoffs. It is possible. It's just that based on that history, it's telling you it's challenging to win that way on your goaltending and your special teams. The Rangers' entire model, the way they've constructed this team, is based on exactly that. They want to be close to even at 5-on-5, goaltending, special teams. The Rangers think they have enough high-end talent that the special teams and the goaltending is enough to compensate for the shortcomings at 5-on-5, the way the Capitals did when they won the Stanley Cup. What was that, 4 years ago now? 5 years ago now? Yeah, 5 years ago now.
Well, and we know that to be true based on the Rangers trade deadline moves. They didn't go out and acquire middle six players that can fill out the roster. They got Tarasenko. They got Patrick Kane. They got players to really, at least in theory, go over the top in terms
Don't
of
forget the
high
team's
end.
leader in high danger chances since he got here, Tyler Mott.
Right. Listen, Tyler Mott has been sensational. Like, he's really been such a great part of that fourth line. And I tweeted this on the Liberty Blue podcast on the last game against Columbus. It's just like the Mott, Goudreau, and VZ line is such a good fourth line to have.
Yeah.
Like they get to the dirty areas. They will grind for a goal. Like Tyler Mott scored twice against Tampa Bay, and they scored again against Columbus. Like this is a team this is a fourth line, I should say, that is one of the best in the league.
Yes.
Truly one of the best fourth lines in the league, and that is something that we've clamored for last season as well.
Yeah, that was a real point in the playoffs last year, was the Rangers' fourth line could not do anything out there other than maybe tread water, and they ended up with their heads below water a lot in the playoffs last year because they just didn't have the guys. They did not have the guys requisite to go on a deep playoff run, because more often than not, that's where your difference makers come from in long playoff series against other really good teams, because the first two lines on really good teams, those two are going to cancel each other out. If everything goes right, the elite players on both teams are going to cancel each other out. And the third and the fourth lines going head to head, the margins are small. We're only talking about, 13 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time a game there. But that 13 minutes of 5-on-5, that's your difference. You think about some of the guys who've had huge moments. I always think about Fedotenko scoring the 2 goals in Game 7 for Tampa Bay against Calgary in 2004.
Yeah.
I think about Nick Paul last year for the Lightning against the Leafs, scoring 2 goals in Game 6 to force a Game 7. It's those secondary scoring guys make the difference in those Game 6s and 7s, and always find a way to be around the net in overtime, because they're going to keep it simple. That's the thing about the fourth line, to your point. They will just go to the net, and they are working for their offense. And they know that if it's not coming, they can keep pushing, because the way they play is replicable. It's easy to do what they do over and over and over again.
The thing about the playoffs is that when you get to the war room, the video room, and you watch and you assess, like, okay, these are the highest dangers, these are the dangerous players to keep in mind, all the coaches will highlight Kane and Zibanejad and all these names, but Tyler Mott isn't at the top of the other teams players to look out for. But because that fourth line is so good and they are capable of scoring, especially when the Rangers need a goal, that is a huge positive in terms of their playoff outlook. Because when you take a look at every team up and down, and you say, okay, Goudreau, Mott, VZ, where do they stack in terms of other teams' fourth lines? Where are they in relation to Tampa Bay's fourth line, or Boston's fourth line, or Carolina's fourth line? can they at the very least be on the same level as those other teams' fourth lines? And the answer to I think is
Yes.
yes. I
Yeah.
think is a yes. That they've played that well to this point that the answer I think is yes. So when the other teams are finding ways to shut down Zibanejad and Tarasenko and Kane and everybody else, you need guys like Mod and VC and Goudreau and those kinds of players to step up and score the goal when is absolutely necessary. And the Rangers this season have the talent in the bottom six to make that happen. When your third line is the kid line that could light it up at whenever they kind of decide to take over, and we saw it last season in the playoffs where that kid line for stretches of the playoffs were on fire. Like they scored at whim. We saw it at stretches this season as well, where the kid line was the best line for good amount of games as well. So when that's your third line and your fourth line is also contributing a good amount of offense, that's a scary team to defend because now not only is the other team have to look at, okay, we have Zibanejad and Kane and Tarasenko in the top six. Okay, you also have the kid line as the third line. Okay, that's scary to deal with. Oh, by the way, the fourth line also scores goals. Have fun.
Yeah, and it lightens the load on your top six guys when the bottom six is able to contribute like that. It's you think about all these runs the Bruins have had the last couple years since they made the Cup final in 2019. What was the knock against them always? They were a one-line team. Once you took care of Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand, there was no secondary scoring on those teams. The Rangers have plenty of secondary scoring. I do think the Rangers' biggest issue, and we'll talk about this more next week when we do an in-depth Rangers Devils preview episode, is the defense,
Yeah.
and that includes
Yeah.
the forwards, but team defense as a whole. Can you survive enough defensively that you can trade chances with them? And yes, you're going to have an advantage in net, Shesterkin versus Vanacek or Blackwood, whoever the Devils end up going with. I imagine it'll be Vanacek unless he gets shelled and maybe you see Blackwood. But Vanacek, Shesterkin is a clear advantage for the Rangers. That leads you to be, okay, we think we can trade chances with them because our goalie's better than their goalie. The defense just needs to be okay enough to survive that. That's really all it means going forward. So speaking of the defense, this is something I went and looked up, and there's a lot of numbers on this screen, but there's only really two or three I want to highlight, so bear with me here. So one of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago, and somebody had mentioned this on Twitter, and I forget who it was as a rough outline of events for when. So prior to the All-Star game, which was the weekend of February 4th, Jacob Trouba was on the ice for 43% of the goals in the game for the Rangers. Since the All-Star break, again, significantly less ice time, being that, it's only 15 games versus 50-something games. But in that 15-game span, Trouba's up at 57% of the goals for. And yes, slightly better goaltending, but not enough to make up for a legitimately 10-point swing in goals for percentage. Because the on ice save percentage prior to the All Star break was 89.68. Since the All Star break, it's 90.16. So that's only, a handful of saves per week at 5-on-5 difference between the two. But that means that they are conceding significantly less goals when Trouba and Miller are on the ice together. That is a positive sign. And we knew, no, I don't know which tense to use on that one, but we were aware that Trouba was dealing with a nagging body injury for that first half of the season. That if it was the recurring was, well, he's got to be in there. They need him. They can't afford to have him sit out, whatever. Okay. That week off at the All-Star break, marginal difference. A full week off when you're dealing with a nagging injury makes a difference. And yeah, we were saying in late November, early December, hey, let him sit a week now as opposed to deal with this nagging injury. But I digress. Point is, the defense has the ability to play better because it really has improved over the course of the season. You think about all those ugly games in November, early December, every game, 5-6 goals against. Goaltending wasn't particularly good, put more of a focus on the defensive struggles. Now the defensive struggles are a bit more of they're a little bit more of just can we play with enough confidence that we trust our guys to do what they're going to do. You don't really have to worry about Fox and Lindgren. The third pair is probably going to be hold on to your butts, whatever. The most crucial anything in this entire playoffs for the Rangers is going to be the Trouba Millet pairing because of the role the coach asks them to play, especially at 5-on-5. And we've seen the really, really lows of that pair early in this season. And we've seen some pretty good points where you see the flashes of an elite defenseman in Keandre Miller. And Trouba hasn't killed you the way he did the first half of the season. That's the fulcrum point. That pair swings kind of how games are going to go for them. And the games that get away from the Rangers, where they end up losing by multiple goals, it's usually that pair that's, on for 2 or 3 goals against. That's the single biggest thing for me, at least looking ahead. I will have plenty of more stats going
Sure.
forward, but that's really something I found interesting because we can point to clear, reported news, time off, improved play without a significant bump in goaltending, which tells you that the defense improved.
Sure. I don't understand why Trouba kept playing despite these injuries earlier on in the season when he kept giving up goals against, and the Rangers were not winning games with him on the ice anyway. So
Yes.
why continue to play somebody like that, especially with he is the captain of the team. He makes a boatload of money a year. You would think that you want him out there when he's healthy and not laboring an injury game 28 of the season. But I digress. I'm not Gerard Gallant. What do I know? I'm not a head coach in the NHL, so clearly he knows more than I do, of course. But the that is really my one concern, and I agree with you. There is how the Miller Trouba pairing will play against a team like the Devils in a 7-game series. Uh, the Devils are a fast team. Keandre Miller, and we'll talk about this next week as well, but Keandre Miller can withstand that speed. Jacob Trouba cannot withstand the speed. He is not a exceptionally fast skater. He's a pretty average skater at best. So when we have to defend Jack Hughes, and I understand defending Jack Hughes is something that only a handful of players in the world can do, but Jacob Trouba is simply not fast enough to defend a lot of the players on the New Jersey Devils. So that is my biggest concern as well, is how is that second pair going to deal with that kind of speed? Miller can do it. Can Trouba do it? I the facts tell me no.
Okay, Andrew, it's time to play The Price is Right for the first time on the Liberty Blue podcast. Okay, so as of right now, all 3 tri state area teams are alive and in playoff spots right now. We'll start with the obvious. Which team has the most expensive of the 3 tickets as the get in price?
I mean, it's the Rangers, of course.
What do you think the cheapest get in price for game 1 at Madison Square Garden, so game 3 of the series, is right now on the secondary market? If you
Uh
had to guess.
I would say let's just go $500.
Over. Way over.
Really?
Get in price, home game 1,
Yeah.
is $327
Okay.
with
I mean,
fees.
hey, it's lower than I thought it was, so I guess that's a win. Not for me because I went over, but I guess for the listen, I thought I was gonna have to sell a kidney to make this happen. It's also only game 1. Well, of game 3 of round 1.
Yes.
So I'm sure if the Rangers win a series or 2 or maybe 3, that number will exponentially rise.
Okay. The thing I found interesting about this was the Devils tickets are legitimately about $100 cheaper, and it is, 15 minutes away. Devils tickets get in price, home game 1, round 1, $225. So if you are so inclined, you can go across the bridge, whether it be driving or on a train, $100 cheaper. And then the Islanders, last out of all 3, $195 to get into game 1, home game 1 of the
If they
Islanders
get in.
series. If they get in right now, and I was looking at Hockey Viz's, which I like the best just because their visuals are the easiest to read. So right now, Hockey Viz has the Islanders finishing with 93.6 standing points, the Panthers with 93.2, and the Penguins with 92.8. So very much still in the margin of error there. The Panthers are on a really good stretch of play here last couple of weeks. They have kind of crawled their way back into this, and the Penguins falling off in the same window has really opened it up. I mean, if the Penguins had even played 500 hockey in the last month, the Panthers would have already be out of it, like the Sabres pretty much are at this point. The Sabres can basically be eliminated tonight, but realistically, you're looking at this being your 1 through 8. Maybe you could say the Penguins get back in, but just wanted to bring up the ticket prices. Okay. 10 minutes before we get out of here, we'll do some awards. We have a few interesting ones. I have a silly one. Andrew has one he suggested. So we'll start with the silly one to get it out of the way. The Patrick Bateman Award for most likely to be a serial killer based on what you order at Dunkin' Donuts. Jimmy Vesey getting a plain
Yeah.
bagel with butter is very concerning. First of all, if you're getting a bagel at Dunkin' Donuts, you're either violently hungover or rushing somewhere. If
Right.
you are getting a plain bagel with butter at Dunkin' Donuts by choice, that tells me you don't really care what you're eating. You're just eating for sustenance.
Sure.
Little bit concerning if you are living in New York City and going to Dunkin' Donuts and getting a plain bagel with butter. Okay.
Especially because there's so many bodegas that have
Yeah, just
so
get a
much better
bagel.
food, dude.
I
Here's the
need Jimmy
thing.
Vesey to go to the bodega on
Yeah.
TikTok. I need him to go get a sandwich the Aki way.
Yeah.
Go grind
Yeah.
up some Cheeto dust, put it on a plain bagel. Get Jimmy Vesey in the Aki way deli in Brooklyn. Get Jimmy
Yeah.
Vesey an Aki way sandwich.
Here's the thing. If Duncan had some specialty whatever bagel that Jimmy Vesey was getting because he couldn't get it anywhere else, that's one thing. This man says, I don't care about your bodegas. I don't care about your better bagel options. I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts to get a plain bagel and butter. This man, dude, listen, Jimothy, I need you to come to
Branch out.
Brooklyn or to Manhattan. There's a lot of bodegas in Manhattan as well. Go to any bodega. Literally, I don't care which one you go to. Anyone's. How about that? You know what we should do? We should get Jimmy Vizzy on the phone and pretend that we are Dunkin' Donuts, and then we're going to take him to a bodega, but we're just going to make a fake sign that says Dunkin' Donuts, and then we're going to present him with a real bagel that's in a bodega instead. We should do that.
Okay. We'll do this one at get it out of the way. The biggest surprise, also Jimmy Vesey, because frankly, very lukewarm on that signing last year when it happened. Did not play a significant role on a Devils team that picked third or fourth in the lottery last year, and has been a legitimately elite defensive forward all season long, no matter what the role. Yeah, they miscast him when he was playing with Zibanejad and Kreider or with Trocheck and Panarin, but it's not his fault. He was misused for the first half of the entire season. He was really good this year. Jimmy Vesey, in the role they asked him to do, he's played a lot of different, he's worn a lot of different hats. He's filled in a lot of different roles. He's going to be a key component on the fourth line that we highlighted before, that we're both really fond of the way it's played since they kind of settled the lineup the way it's going to. Easily for me, biggest surprise, Jimmy Vesey.
I agree. When we talked about him at the time, we said he was a guy. That was kind of our summary of Jimmy Vesey to this point, and we went off of how he played before he got here.
He was waived last year.
He was essentially out of the league. The Rangers gave him one last chance to be
gave him a PTO.
Just show us anything. Just show us what you can do, and we'll go from there. And Jimmy Vesey has turned that last saving grace into a very important position on this team. He has played really well defensively. He's had his offensive flashes. He's one of the three players on that very important fourth line that play really well and are dangerous whenever they're on the ice against other teams' fourth lines, because they are one of the best fourth lines in the entire league. So for Jimmy Vesey to essentially latch on to the final saving grace of his NHL career, turning that into what he's become now for the Rangers, it would be almost a crime to really pick anybody else for biggest surprise here.
Yeah, no, he's been everything you could ask for what they brought him in on. One of the biggest critiques I've had of this front office is their inability to pay anybody their actual market value for the production they give them. Jimmy Vesey has exceeded his contract in the terms of the value he's provided for the Rangers this year. Easily. Okay, next up, we will do... Let's go with most disappointing.
Okay. To me, it's still Jacob Trouba. It's unfortunate in a lot of ways because, again, I don't want to be a Trouba hater. I don't want to be somebody that just drags and drags about Trouba and, oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. His contract is so big. I hate being that guy, but at the same time, if you're the captain of a team, first of all, captains of the team usually are one of the top five. We talked about this at the beginning of the season. Normally, the captain is one of the five best players on the team, and Jacob Trouba is not one of those five. And to be so disappointing on the defensive end, like that is really my biggest gripe with him. And also when he has the puck on his stick in the offensive zone,
He
he's
calls
not
his own number a lot.
he's not dangerous. Like he will shoot the puck. 95% of those shots go 8 feet wide, and the other 5% hit the goalie square in the logo, and that's that. There's you freeze the puck, you give up possession, and there's a face off. So offensively, he's not really doing much, and defensively, he's giving up a lot. And that's my biggest disappointment. Is like, okay, well, Jacob, like Trouba, eventually is going to improve, right? He's going to figure this out. He's Jacob Trouba. Like he has that contract for a reason. He has these, expectations on him for a reason. He has these minutes played per game for a reason. And yet, when you watch him play, you're just disappointed by what you see. And unfortunately, as much as again, I really don't like being, a negative Nancy when it comes to Jacob Trouba. I got to do it. He's been my biggest disappointment.
I will go similar vein. I was expecting a little bit more in year two of Braden Schneider as an everyday NHL player. I understand he's dealt with pretty bad partner play all year. He had multiple partners in the early part of the season where they had him out there with Zach Jones, Hayek, Harper, Mikkola, back to Harper now. And I understand it's really hard as a young guy when you don't really have somebody you can lean on as a partner. But every time Harper and Schneider have been on the ice for the last like 3 weeks, I've just been clenching my butt and holding on to the armchairs on my chair, the arms of my chair, because they just cannot exit the zone at any point. And Schneider's a decent skater where I feel like they should be encouraging him to use his skating to get the puck out of danger a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with using the window to clear the zone, reset, and try and catch your breath. But if that's your only way of exiting the zone, which the stats bear out that Schneider uses the window the most out of all the defensemen on the team, it's a little discouraging for somebody who is, a 20th overall pick that the organization is extremely high on. Not to say he won't keep getting better. Defensemen typically season a little bit differently than forwards. They typically develop a little bit slower because defense is harder than playing forward in the NHL. You think about some of the other guys on the Rangers who are successful right now, Keandre, Lindgren, Fox, all extensive time before they got to the league. Fox, 3 years of college, Keandre, 2 years of college, Lindgren, 2 years of college, and then half a season in the AHL. So you give him the benefit of the doubt based on that because, he's only 20 versus the other guys who were 22, 23 by the time they made their debuts. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him this year.
I don't disagree. But it is tough. And the one thing I'll kind of push back a little bit on, like it's really tough to grow as a defenseman especially in the NHL, when for X amount of games, however many Ben Harper played, you have to play with Ben Harper, and it's I'm not I'm not going after Ben Harper, the individual, but as a hockey player, he is not great. So when you are 20 years old, like Braden Schneider is, to be tasked with, okay, how do I play my game while trying to improve, while also essentially covering for my defensive partner? How do I do all of these three things at once? And with Mikkola there, it is a lot better. I'm not saying it's perfect. Obviously, there's still holes, but in terms of defensive pairings, I have a lot more faith in Schneider Mikkola than I do in Schneider Harper. And Ben Harper, listen, he got his bag, and I'm go celebrate, have a do whatever you want with that money, but please don't play in the NHL. Like that's just it. Like that's just it is what it is with Ben Harper. He's not an NHL defenseman. So when you strap somebody like that to a 20-year-old defenseman, he's a lot of the times he's just focusing on how do we not give up a goal here because my defensive partner can't catch up to anybody, and people skate circles around him, and he can't really defend either. So I kind of not fully, but I do give Brain Schneider a little bit of a pass to having to deal with that for half a season.
Word. Okay. We'll swing it the other way now. We'll do best vibes. I'm curious who you're going to say for this, but I have someone in mind.
Alexei Lafreniere. I like
You
his.
motherfucker stole my line.
Come on, his vibes are off the charts.
He's a
He is
goofball. He is hysterical.
he's so unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
Like he's happy to be there.
Yeah.
And he's the first overall pick. So you would think that he has some ego about him and he's like, "Oh, I'm too good for this, etc." He's just happy to be there. I love his attitude. And again, we don't see him on a day-to-day basis. We don't talk to him. We don't see him in the locker room when the cameras are off. We don't know you know, aspects of Alexei Lafreniere. But when he's on camera, he's hilarious. When he for no reason, that picture on the bench of him with the chin strap like on his mouth. I mean, like nobody else is doing that on the team. Like it's all Lafreniere. He's hilarious, and he gets my best vibes award.
Oh yeah, no, he's hysterical. He's got like this sense of humor of like a 14-year-old, where he's always kind of like zoning out, and he's always got a goofy look on his face. Everybody else around him got like a stoic, aggressive game face look, and he's just looking around like, wow, there's a lot of people here. This is crazy. This is Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And it's like year 3 of him in the NHL,
Yeah.
and he's still like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
It's very fun when you got guys like that on the team who bring it back into reality a little bit, as opposed to some of the more, the hardo guys who make everything about hockey their entire existence, and the 3 branches of government to them are pucks and deep, as opposed to those types of guys. Okay,
Playful 60. You can't forget about that.
yeah, got to get pucks and deep. All right, last 2. Most valuable player. I have someone specific in mind. Who do you got?
Shesterkin. I mean, it has to be Shesterkin. I don't like. You can make a case for Adam Fox. You can make a case for maybe a forward or two, but Igor Shesterkin is still the number one reason Rangers are here, and he will be the number one reason why the Rangers make it or don't make it far in the playoffs. If Shesterkin manages a 94 save percentage, and all of a sudden the Rangers carry that into a cup appearance, then like that will essentially be the season for them. But if like Shesterkin has played, you can argue that there's been a couple of weeks here and there where he hasn't played that well, but for the most part, he is still the rock of their team. They play a certain way because they know that Shesterkin is back there ready to bail them out when inevitably there's a 2-on-1 the other way and Ben Harper's defending it. Like they play this way because of their MVP Igor Shesterkin. Like he won the Vezina last year. He's not going to win it this year, but he's still the number one reason to me why they're here.
The argument for Shesterkin is the entire strategy for the team is rooted in having the better goalie than the other team. They play that soccer style counterattack based on the fact that they think their goalie is going to be able to make a save more often than not, and they're going to be able to go the other way fast, even though the other team is going to outshoot them most nights. That's the argument for Shesterkin on just like a fundamental level. Like you can't, if that doesn't work, the entire rest of the team, the way it's assembled, doesn't. For me, I'm going to argue Adam Fox purely because I don't want to repeat another one of your answers, even though we've already overlapped a few times. But yeah, Fox is the single most. Fox isn't going to win the Norris because points go burr on one of the worst teams in the entire league. It's great. Erik Karlsson has 100 points. I'd argue Adam Fox's 70-something points on the Rangers are a lot more valuable than Erik Karlsson's 100 on the Sharks. Because if you have a 100-point defenseman and you don't even have... If you were eliminated from the playoffs by New Year's and you have a 100-point defenseman on your team, I don't really think it matters.
Right.
Like, I think if you told Adam Fox you don't have to worry about defense, he could do a 100-point season. I really think you could get an argument to do that. Fox is the single most important skater they have on the team. Shesterkin's the most important player. Fox is the most important skater. Okay. Last one, most obvious one. Do you think the Rangers' regular season was successful?
Yeah, I definitely do. When you get to, like we talked about earlier, when you get to over 100 points, it's always going to be a successful season. Is it going to be 63 wins and the Boston Bruins successful? I guess not. But like that is an unattainable
Well,
level of success that anybody would want to achieve. Like what the Boston Bruins are doing is literally breaking records. You can aspire to do these things, but reasonably, you can't be like, oh well, if the Rangers don't win 65 games this year, they're a failure. No, the answer is yeah, like they are comfortably in the playoffs. They've gotten over 100 points. And like we talked about, they haven't played well for stretches through the season, and yet they're still in this position. They added some pieces at the deadline who, that are going to hopefully be positively impact the Rangers come these next couple of months here, hopefully next couple of months. With their acquisitions, they didn't make any particularly egregious mistakes, at least in the front office. Like Tarasenko trade wasn't all that expensive. Patrick Kane, we've talked about him as an individual, et cetera, et cetera. As the trade in and of itself, maybe they overpaid a little bit. We've argued that, whatever. But in terms of how they've built this team, how they've overcome what happened early December, like we talked about, if they didn't beat that St. Louis team, who knows what the Rangers could look like right now? They were on the verge of making a lot of changes, and yet they came back, and now we're here. So through all of that, over 100-point season, comfortably in the playoffs, and they look good. So yeah, I would say this has been a successful season for sure.
yeah, no, completely agreed with you. The one point I'll make on this, and I'll go real quick so we get out of here so people got time to go to the bathroom, get a drink before the game starts. To go over 105, 110 points, you are getting a lot of things to go your way. And yes, everybody who is good gets lucky at some degree. That's just how sports work. Luck goes your way a handful of times over the course of a really good season. It becomes an all-time great season. That's what the Bruins have right now. That's not discounting them as a team. The Bruins are clearly a very good team, but it takes a lot to go right to have that many wins in the regular season. That's all I'm going
Yep.
to say on that.
Well, and really quick before we go, we did. There's one more award that we want to get over. We wanted to talk about is most improved, because while VC to me is the biggest surprise, I think Filipino deserves most improved, because he had flashes throughout last playoffs and etc. But this season, he's really, I think, really grown into the player that resembled what people thought he could be. He's way more dynamic offensively. He's gotten a lot better defensively as well, and somebody that has grown into his own. It has taken a while, but I think Filipino at least deserves recognition to how he's improved his game this season.
Oh, I've always known Filipino was like this. Go read the tape. I wrote about this in January of 2021. Go listen to the podcast we did the day they signed Vincent Trocheck.
Yeah,
I knew Filipino
yeah,
was about
yeah,
that
yeah.
action. I've been pounding the drum on him just staying healthy. That's the biggest reason he's
Sure.
been successful this year. He's only missed a handful of games all year. That's been the biggest barrier for him to find sustained success at the NHL level, was he's missed a lot of time. He's here now. He's a guy. He is here, and he's a guy that can be counted on to make a play in a big situation. That expression is too overused now. I don't like using that anymore. When it first dropped, it was fire. When Stephon Diggs was yelling that on the sideline of Sunday Night Football, that was fire. But now it's kind of drawn out at this point, where you have like middle-aged people making that joke, like on the sports section of the news, like the local news in the morning. He's him is dead. He's him is dead.
Yeah. Well. All right.
Sorry to burst your bubble there, Andrew. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Liberty Blue Podcast. Make sure you are following along. We're available on all the major podcasting platforms, YouTube as well if video is your thing. Leave reviews, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following along on social. Lots of content to follow for the playoffs. We'll have a whole lot of stuff to cover on next week's preview. We still don't know if the Rangers-Devils series is going to start Monday or Tuesday of next week. Either way, we'll be here live Monday, 6 p.m., Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Make sure you are following on social, Twitter, and Instagram at Liberty Blue Pod. Answer our question. Do you start your facial hair over at the start of the playoffs, or do you keep growing what you already have? We will see you guys next week. Enjoy the Rangers-Sabres game if you're, I don't know, a sicko. All right, we'll see you then.